Okay. With that, let's jump into it. Greetings and welcome to the October 7th, 2020 Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. The first item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance, which is difficult to do remote, but we are going to do it. So I will cover my camera and lead us in that. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for that. The next item on our agenda is attendance. Wayne, I will turn it over to you.
Mr. Mundy?
Present.
Mr. Papa?
Present.
Mrs. Campins?
Present.
Mr. Jones?
Present.
Mr. Wolf?
Present. Thank you, Wayne. We will pause after the approval of the meeting minutes to recognize if any of our community members want to be recognized as being present online. So let's have a discussion about our September 2nd, 2020 meeting minutes. Those should have been submitted in, actually, I believe we have both packets of meeting minutes. Is that correct? Let me look.
Yeah, 2 months.
Okay, so let's go chronological. Let's start with the August meeting minutes. Any discussion amongst the group? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve the August 5th, 2020 meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Mundy. Thank you, Mr. Jones. Let's do a roll call vote to make it official.
I will tackle that. All right, Mr. Mundy?
Aye.
Mr. Papa?
Aye.
Mrs. Campins?
Aye.
Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Thank you. Those meeting minutes are approved. The next on our agenda is the approval of the September 2nd, 2020 meeting minutes. Any discussion amongst the group?
Well, I wasn't really there, I guess, but I don't get to vote.
I think that would be appropriate,
All right.
unless you want to vote on the first 2 pages.
Yeah, exactly.
If there's no discussion, I would entertain a motion to approve the September 2nd, 2020 meeting minutes.
Moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Papa. Is that Mrs. Campins with a second?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Let's do a roll call vote, and we will exclude Mr. Jones.
Very good. Mr. Mundy?
Aye.
Mr. Papa?
Aye.
Mrs. Campins?
Aye.
Mr. Wolf?
Aye. The September 2nd meeting minutes are approved. Moving forward, let's stop here, and Roger or Wayne, do we have any of our community members who want to be recognized as in attendance of our meeting?
We have a few hands going up. I'll give it just one more minute.
Okay.
Just one more. We have John Towsley, Jeff Brown, Dr.Luke Guillen, Mark Zalonis, Brandon Cottle, Sally Zalonis, Barb Thorpe, Jason Thorpe, Mark Walters, Larry Wrights, and Ben Meyer.
Welcome to our community members. Thank you. Are there any petitioners who are on our agenda tonight who are going to ask for a continuance request? And Roger, I'll probably turn that back over to you to see if anyone raises their hands.
There are no hands raised.
Very good. So then let's move on to the next item on our agenda, which is continued business, which brings us to docket number 2020-14-DSV for the property located at 7655 East 550 South. Can we bring the petitioner forward?
I am promoting Mr. Wrights.
Mr. Wrights, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Very good. Would you please state your name and address for the record?
My name is Lawrence A. Wrights. Second, my address is 5202 South US Highway 421, Zionsville, Indiana.
Very good. Mr. Wrights, we left our conversation off last month, hoping that you would have the chance to talk to some neighbors. But before we get into that, let's start with just a brief recap of what you're asking for tonight.
Myself and my parents, we are asking to build a pole barn accessory structure on property that we own on 550 South, 7655 East 550 South. And it is going to be primarily for the use, as we stated before, for farm type equipment. We have tractors, 2 tractors, a couple of hay wagons, a mower conditioner, and inverter that we would like to keep on that property, which is adjacent, and this building is adjacent to fields that we have where we currently have hay, where we're currently harvesting hay from.
Mr. Wrights, we have in our notes that the building is 50 by 60, which makes it 3,000 square feet. Is that correct?
I believe that I stated in our letter to the town that it would not exceed that. It's quite possible that it could end up being smaller than that, but
Okay.
it would not be bigger than that.
Very good. And do you have an indication of the height of the structure at this time?
At the our best guesstimates would be less than 20 feet tall, as I stated at the previous meeting, which not everybody was there. The tractor, one of the tractors that we have, has a cab enclosure on there. Typical doors are 10 feet for such a vehicle, height-wise, and it's probably going to be less than 20 feet tall. We're expecting it's probably going to be probably closer to 18 feet.
Okay. And staff made a note in the documentation that we have that 3,000 square feet is sort of a larger structure. And as I recall our conversation last week, you thought that was appropriate because of the amount of equipment you intend to keep in the barn?
Yes, we did do some mowing, and I did meet with one of the residents over there, and we did kind of mark out the approximate location painted on the ground. I did have, like I said, there was one resident who had contacted me, and we met over there on site. We do have a tractor that's parked over there now. It does take up a fairly significant amount of that space without any additional equipment.
Okay, so I think that gets us caught up to what you're asking for.
Mhm.
And then as we were going through our conversation last month, what happened was several neighbors voiced concerns about the condition of another piece of property and the fact that that may reflect what is going to happen to this property. And as I look at my notes, their concerns were revolved around what that might do to their property values. So I think, as I recall, and I look at the minutes, we asked both parties to get together and see if we can come up with some sort of agreement or amendable solution for everybody. So can you update us on what happened with that?
So I did reach out to all of the adjoining neighbors. We sent out a new letter to not only the people who were required to contact initially, but also other neighbors within Stonegate. I also did reach out to each one of the individuals who was allowed to speak. There was a cutoff for the remonstration because it was starting to go over time. I did also contact each one of those via letter and asked them to contact me via email. I gave them my cell phone number, told them I could receive texts, And out of all of those letters, I did receive a response from Mr. Casey. We did meet on the Wednesday, I believe it was September 30th on site, as I mentioned. We walked around. He generally agreed that the location of the barn was in a placement that was the least objectionable. However, he was concerned about other kinds of activities. I asked him if he had also sent me an email. I think maybe you guys might have that. I believe that staff was contacted on some on some conditions that he had thought or was tentatively proposing. I had responded back to ask for further clarification. I have yet to receive a response to that. I did ask him at the meeting if he wanted to clarify anything, and he really didn't have anything to say. He did mention to me that that if there were conditions, I told him that, you know, if we place conditions, that those kind of run with the land. He said, well, you could make them so that they only lasted for as long as you own the property, which I kind of found that to be somewhat objectionable. You know, it didn't have anything to do with the use or any of those other things. It was basically directed at us owning the property and how we could be able to use it. So it didn't go any further. I did make commitments, said that we would add some trees. I showed him the trees that were already there on the property. I did send a picture to the staff, a panorama of the site. It is well screened with deciduous trees. They're densely branched trees, and you know, there are a few undesirable bushes, Eurasian honeysuckle, which is kind of an invasive type bush that we probably would remove a few of those, but those are all understory type trees or bushes. They don't have any significant height. So
Okay, so in your conversations with, I believe it was Mr. Casey.
that's correct. Who
Did
is
you
the president of the Homeowners Association board.
Did you come to any conclusions on whether or not additional landscaping should be added, or if there should be did you come to any agreements on any conditions that should be placed on the property, whether it be outdoor storage or anything along those lines, or were those conversations inconclusive?
You know, as I said, you know, I would be willing to add some additional trees if it was, you know, warranted. I don't really want to add trees that are going to have some kind of adverse effect, and but I would be, you know, okay with adding some additional trees. He didn't say anything about that or a number or types or offer any suggestions other than that any commitments, you know, he felt that they could just be for as long as we own the property.
Okay. Can work our way through that later. Was outdoor storage discussed?
Quite a bit of time talking about Alersa property, which was one of the things that they had talked about. You know, essentially, he as president of the board, there's right now, I guess there's a little bit of a dispute over on that property, and you know, he said that some of his angst about this property, of course, had to do with that, but he said that really most of his remonstrance or feeling towards remonstration centered around the Alersa issue.
So, as I recall the conversation, the remonstrators were, and I believe, is the Alersa property? I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with that name. Is that the property on up at the front of Stonegate that's near the dentist's office?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So yes, there was concerns that property was poorly maintained and with similar ownership,
Right.
what example would we have here that this would be better maintained in a more favorable condition? So, and directly, they thought if it wasn't maintained properly, then it would negatively affect the property values. So how do you address those concerns?
As I mentioned previously, you know, the closest lot in Stonegate is one that is owned and currently for sale by my parents. I also mentioned that my parents and myself have owned over probably close to 400 some properties in Zionsville since 1978. I believe that this is probably the only time that something like that has happened. I believe that the site has been cleaned up since the last meeting. I don't know where exactly all of that stands, but you know, the few things that were sitting out around there had been picked up and moved and relocated. And so, you know we heard from Mrs. Benner, who is also on the board. Um, you know, she had raised the same kinds of concerns. Um, you know, she said that that there were, you know, issues with the family and so forth. But, you know, like I said, I think we have a historic record, and I don't believe that this one incident is anywhere in a is accurate in its reflection on us. That property that is next to the dentist office, I'm sure that if you ask Mr. DeLong, he knows that that property is zoned for different kind of use. It's actively been marketed since probably 2007, and you know, those buildings that are located on that property are not going to stay there. I heard Mr. Casey make a case that you know, if you allow a pole building to be built on this property, that you are effectively rezoning the property, and no other use will ever occur on that, which is basically not accurate. If that was the case, Stonegate would never have been built, because there was about 4 pole barn buildings and 3 homes that were located within the Stonegate neighborhood that were removed to make room for the Stonegate neighborhood. We're asking for a very simple building, and we aren't asking to have a concrete floor or anything like that. If a future owner decides to remove it or do something different, I'm certain that it's not going to be an issue to remove it if they desire to do that.
Okay. Do any of my fellow board members have any questions for Mr. Wrights?
Mr. Wrights, is that property now for sale?
Yes, it is.
And the wisdom of building a pole barn on a piece of property you have for sale, can you explain that?
My parents are developers, as are we. We have an 11-acre parcel that's located out on Oak Street, the Lursa parcel, which is my brother and myself and my mom. That's, like I said, has been for sale since 2007. This is a large parcel. I don't expect that it's necessarily going to sell very quickly, but we like to be able to go ahead and build a building there. Talked to the county assessor. They said that building a building would not adversely affect anybody's joiner's property value. As a matter of fact, leaving equipment just parked outside may, but not having it stored inside such a building, and that it would actually increase the value of the property.
So was that a commitment to not leave equipment outside of the building?
We don't intend to leave equipment outside. You know, when I talked to Mr. Casey, he was like, well, I don't, you know, if you have electricity, are you going to have a well there or something like that? And I said, well, it's quite possible that we might, you know, we might want to wash something up. He's like, well, I don't want you to have a well there. How do you wash things off? without leaving them out in the rain if you can't have a well or some source of water. It's I'm not I'm not going to be leaving equipment out regularly. We did have another tractor that was there, parked there at the time of the last meeting, and about the next day or so when I went over there to take a look at it, someone had vandalized it. We don't intend to leave equipment out there regularly. It's not really a secure location. The barn would satisfy that, but I can't make any kind of promise that I'm not going to have something parked out overnight after being used. I'm certain that if there's an issue out there, that Mr. DeLong and his staff are more than capable of taking care of it.
What other questions do we have for Mr. Wrights?
I got a couple. Regarding the property up on 334, I remember a conversation from years ago that there was a parcel up there that your family didn't own, and that was part of the concern with trying to figure out what the future development of that was going to be. Am I remembering something correctly?
I'm afraid that I do not know anything about that, what you might be talking about.
So all the parcel along 334 that people have been concerned about the redevelopment of it has always been your family's property.
It has been our parents' property, my mom, myself, and my brothers since the purchase of it from the Ravensteins, and that was sometime in and around, I think, 2006.
Okay. And currently northeast of this property, there's a large amount of property with baled hay on it. Is that your property up there that you guys are pulling the hay off of?
You're talking about the barn there?
Talking about there's currently northeast of this lot, there's a large parcel that seems to have a bunch of, I won't say baled or bald hay on it currently. Is that your property?
I'm sorry. I guess I'm still confused. Are you talking about northeast of the Lursa parcel, or are we back to 550 parcel?
Yeah, northeast of the 550 parcel.
That would be, I believe that might be the Harmons.
So the hay that you're going to store in this, where's all that coming from?
Well, it comes from part of it comes from Lursa, and part of it comes off of that property there. That's 550.
The parcel we're talking about?
Yes, where we would like to build the barn. There's about 7 acres there.
Correct, but I didn't see anything where it looked like you were actually growing hay. It seemed mostly
it was just recently mowed off of that field, and the field out on the Alersa parcel. I think we collected 85 bales in the spring cutting, and in the fall cutting it was a little bit lighter, but it was around 50 some bales off of those 2 parcels, and that's because of the drought and the lack of rain.
Any other questions for the petitioner at this point? Okay, seeing none, let's move over to the remonstrators in our public comment section. Let's see if there's anyone who would like to speak for or against this particular project.
We are having a few hands raised. The first one that was up was Trisha Benner, so I will allow her to speak.
Hello, I'm
1 second, Ms. Benner.
Yes.
Roger, do you want to move Larry, Mr. Wright's back.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I'm in my car, so I'm going to stay off video.
Very good. And would you please state your
Sorry.
name and address for the record?
Trisha Benner, 6615 Westminster Drive, Zionsville. I'm a POA board member in Stonegate.
Thank you, Ms. Benner. And what concerns or thoughts do you have on this project?
I wanted to clarify the comments of mine that were quoted by Mr. Wright early on. I don't recall, I'm not sure what he was talking about when he mentioned his family, me saying something about his family. I disagree with his comments that he's going to leave equipment out. I actually just drove back in my neighborhood tonight and saw a kind of a broken down orange pickup truck sitting on the edge of their property at on the 334 property. And from my view from a friend's house across that pond, it's not cleaned up. And I'm wondering why they can't just pull that equipment into that barn if they intend to store equipment inside the barn. Why can't we just pull it into the barn on 334? So I'm just wondering what's inside there. Like I said last time, I'm concerned they'll remove the items at the 334 property and put them in the 550 property. So it's like we're moving, an ill-kept property to another property. I'm also really confused. Forgive me, I just maybe don't have a lot of knowledge in this field, but why would you put a property up for sale that you are asking for a variance to build a barn on? I don't understand.
Yeah, I'm not sure I have an answer for that either. I'm not sure I need one. I think I want to try to surmise and keep this on point. I can't fix any problems with the property on Whitestown Parkway or Valera or whatever it was, that property we're referencing. That's not in front of us.
Okay.
I do agree that it may set an example for how another property would be kept by the same ownership group. So I think that is relevant to our conversation. So your concerns specifically are the fact that you don't think the property will be maintained based on your experience, and that would affect property values?
Absolutely. I'd also like to add that that's not the only example of properties they haven't maintained. We can show you financial records in Stonegate. They didn't maintain this neighborhood as a developer. So we have a long history of things that we're cleaning up after them from a POA perspective. So that's not a single example of an area that hasn't been maintained, unfortunately.
Okay, very good. So you are concerned about the property won't be maintained, and that will affect the adjoining property values.
Absolutely, it will, yeah.
Very good. All right, thank you, Ms. Benner.
Next, I will move Dr. Luke Guillen. Allow him to, hold on one moment. Allow him to talk.
Can you guys hear me?
We can. Would you please state your name and address for the record?
Dr. Luke Guillen, 7684 Deerfield Way, Zionsville.
Very good. And Dr. Guillen, what are your concerns with this project?
So my house is one of the houses that the backyard looks right into where he plans on building this barn. So literally looking outside the back of my house, this is what I will see every day. And as everybody keeps alluding to, the Wrights' ability to maintain a property is questionable at best. So my concern is, my beautiful view that I paid extra, for this particular lot, actually from the Wrights', Larry Jr.'s brothers, who we bought it from, is going to be ruined by this pole barn that he's trying to build. And so that's my main concern, that they don't have a great track record on being able to maintain properties, and that's going to negatively impact mine if he does kind of build this barn. And then actually I thought all this was going to be a moot point, because I saw that shortly after that last meeting that the property is listed for sale. So now I'm kind of confused why we're still even discussing this.
Well, if the Wrights still own the property, they certainly have the right or the privilege to ask for a variance. So yeah, I'm not sure if that weighs into our conversation tonight. But one of the things I do want to ask you while I have you, and I see your address, I'm looking on my other screen. I see your home, excuse me. Do you think a home built on that property would negatively affect the value of your property?
No, because I expect if somebody's building a house there that they're invested in it, you know, they're living there, they want it to look good. So no, I don't think that would.
Very good. Thank you for taking the time to participate.
Dr. Guillen, I've got a quick question, and I want to just get some clarity. The parcel of land we're talking about is bordered by 550 on the north edge, the adjoining property to the east, but is the southwest border basically the creek?
Yes.
Okay, so then the area behind your house, is that all part of the Stonegate Common land?
Yeah, it is. I guess.
Okay, so basically you pay a fee somewhere to maintain that property as common area for the subdivision.
Yeah, I mean, presumably some of our HOA dues, you know, goes towards maintenance of that.
Well, you pay the taxes on it somewhere.
Sure.
And then just while I'm talking, the other question is then for Mr. Reitz, how do you guys move back and forth between this existing barn up there along Oak 334 and this parcel in the back? What roads are you using?
Actually, can we hang on for that question? Can we get Mr. Reitz back later on?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Larry, will you mind if we pause on that question and we'll get back to it?
No problem.
Thank you, sir. Roger, do we have someone else that would like to speak for or against this particular petition?
Yes, we have Ben Meyer, who I will allow to speak.
Mr. Meyer, would you please state your name and address for the record?
Yeah, Ben Meyer, thanks for having me. I'm 6486 West Deerfield Court, Zionsville, in the Stonegate neighborhood. So my backyard also overlooks this area directly. We are next to the lot that the Wrightses also have for sale. So just reiterating the same concerns, purchased this lot with the understanding from Mr. Wrights that this whole area was common area for Stonegate, that it would be preserved, and then have concerns again if this barn or the pole barn at the front of the neighborhood is torn down and that equipment is moved. I think a lot of that equipment is dilapidated and there's old cars and trucks, and it is unsightly. I think if that is on display, because I'm on a hill and can see that whole property, I foresee that property just being used as a transfer site and that equipment being stored there. I've also not, so I have a good view of that property. I do not see a agricultural use that has been on that property as far as all these bales of hay. I don't know where that is coming from. I have not been able to witness those numbers that were reported.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. If I want to clarify one point, your property is at a higher elevation. We're in Indiana, so it's not terribly higher, but it is at a higher elevation than this property, so you overlook it. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, correct. I have an aerial view. I'm treetop level.
Okay. Immediately behind your property, as I'm looking at the property map, it appears that that would probably be a common area for Stonegate, the subdivision, and then across the creek is the property we're talking about, correct?
Correct.
Very good. Okay, we're on the same page. And your concerns were that dilapidated equipment would negatively affect your property values. Do you mind if I ask, do you feel a home on this parcel would affect your property values?
No, I feel like if a home is purchased there, it'll be a stately home, a nice country home that will be upkept, and I would foresee that property being managed better by a, if there's a primary home on that rather than a place to store equipment.
Okay. Mr. Meyer, thank you very much for participating.
Thank you.
Mr. President?
Yes, sir.
Can I ask Mr. Meyer something really quick?
Yep. Sorry. Absolutely.
Mr. Meyer, Mr. Meyer, you mentioned that your understanding was supposed to be maintained forever, or were you talking about the lot we're talking about or the common area of Stonegate?
It was my understanding from Mr. Wrights when purchasing the property that the entire area was common area. Obviously, that's a separate issue, but I was not under the impression that at someday I would be overlooking a pole barn, which dilapidated farm equipment.
Thanks.
Roger, is there someone else who would like to speak?
Yes, the next one is C. Weber.
Yes. Sorry.
Yes, would you please state your name and address for the record?
Yes, my name is Chris Weber. I'm at 7671 Deerfield Way. That is in the Stonegate neighborhood. I am across the street from most of the neighbors that have just spoke, Luke and Ben Meyer. So I don't directly abut the neighborhood or the piece of property in which we're discussing. But I do have some concerns. As was stated, I was at or adjacent to the property on 334 this evening. I can tell you it is not being maintained as presented by Mr. Wright. It is overgrown. There are a number of pieces of equipment that are laying there. There is uncut wood that has vegetation growing amongst it and through it. And so basically it looks like an abandoned farm. I only bring these points up because of my concern that Mr. Wright has made a number of promises over the years, or the Wrights family in total, in which they have not fulfilled. So I believe Mr. Wright's talked about a single incident of property neglect, we'll call it. And I will say, I've been in Zionsville since 2000. We only chose to build our house here in Stonegate 2 years ago because of concerns we've had over the years with the development of Stonegate and such. The other thing that I wanted to bring up, I am not sure if anyone has looked at the flood maps, but I know that twice in the 20 years that I've lived in Zionsville, I believe that's Fishback Creek that separates the Stonegate common area from the parcel we're discussing. I know that twice most of that property has been under significant water, somewhere between 3 and 5 feet. I don't know if it's in the 100-year plane or where it is, but I know 2 times in the 20 years I've been here, that property has been under a lot of water. So that's another concern, is that development on that property may not be well thought out and have flood concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Weber. It is noted in our packet of information that this particular parcel has at least portions of it that are in the special flood hazard area. So from Fishback Creek. So that has been identified.
Okay.
Very good. Roger, I'll go back to you.
Thank you. I will allow John Casey to speak. Vote him.
Roger, before we speak with Mr. Casey or Mr. or Mrs. Casey, how many people does it appear would like to speak on this?
This is the last hand that is raised.
Very good. Thank you.
I'm sorry, just as I said that, there was one more hand raised.
Okay. For the record, I'm going to limit public comment because it's very consistent. I think it's important, but it's very consistent. So I'm not sure if redundancy is adding anything to our conversation. So we'll hear from the remaining 2, and then we'll see what we need to do from there. All right. Mr. or Mrs. Casey, please state your name and address for the record.
My name is John Casey. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Can you hear me?
We can.
And thank you. My address is 7597 West Stonegate in, of course, Zionsville, Indiana. And as been stated, I am the president of the Stonegate Property Owners Association Board. First, I just want to thank you for your time and patience, having sat through more BZA meetings than I care to admit. I have a great deal of sympathy for you. So with that, I'll be brief, and I'll just start off with 5 points. Number 1, there is an underlying element of urban or suburban encroachment here. And there always is. Again, having represented clients and BZAs in rural areas, that always comes up as an issue. It's not here. This was the Wrights farm. They decided to convert the use to a residential use. And in doing so, they made a compact with the residents that they were selling property to in their actions. And quite frankly, in many respects, they failed miserably in that. And just enough said about that. Number two, again, while the sale of the property may not be important, when you consider they're asking $500,000 for a 7-acre parcel, if my math is correct, that's something like $67,500 per acre. Gentlemen, that's not a price for agricultural property. Having lived in Benton County, Jasper County, Newton County, I have some knowledge about the price of good farmland. That's waste ground. Now, I met with the applicant, and what he told you is mainly, I don't know where he's getting it from. He told me where they wanted to locate the property. I asked Larry, I said, Larry, what do you really intend to use this property for? Let's just get down to it. He said, we want to store our equipment storage. And I said, okay, why don't you make a commitment that that's the only use you'll put the property to? Then that initiated probably a 15-minute discussion about he wasn't willing to make any commitments that would limit the use of the property, because what he thought he might want to do today might not be what he wanted to do tomorrow. That, gentleman, was the sum and substance of an hour-and-a-half conversation that Larry and I had. There were no commitments. He is the one that told me that he would check with his parents and see if they wanted to make any commitments, he would get back to them. I did not represent to him that I would communicate with them in any further way. And as I understood it, he asked me what board members he could talk to. I gave him the name of a couple of board members if he wanted to talk to them, and I have no idea whether or not he did. The fourth issue, and again, the reason the Larissa property is important, you already have a barn which theoretically would be a non-conforming use in that there is no other structure on that property. And that's the Larissa property. And I know, Mr. Chairman, that you aren't interested in that property. It's not before you, but I would submit if you do have property and you have an applicant coming in asking you to make an exception to your zoning rules, and they already have a non-conforming use and are under investigation to clean that up, I'm not sure what relief he's entitled to here if he can't abide by the zoning ordinances and the ordinances in the first place. So then the final issue is there's obviously more to it than just a barn. While I certainly agree with those residents that live back there where my home is, I'll never see it. So, you know, personally for me, that's not the issue. But the underlying issue is we have problems with the developer right now about the ownership of property that we thought should be in the subdivision. So up around the Larissa property, Larry Wrights is blocking our moors for a property that we've mowed for 15 years. And he's put up a no trespass sign in property that we thought was part of the subdivision that's literally within feet of some of our neighbors and residents' back porches. And right now, I mean, you know, that's going to be an issue, probably in litigation. When I was out there at the visiting with him, I said, well, where's your property line? He said, well, we own all the way to the other side of the creek, meaning the south side of the creek. So I went back and I looked at the agreement that his parents made or purportedly made with the Property Owners Association. And lo and behold, what does it say? They were not conveying the property to the north of the creek, meaning that the Stonegate POA owns the creek and everything south. So it's just these continual issues, and this is just going to be another one of them. And that's where we are on this. And in our opinion, it's just something, a variance is just not indicated in this. They don't have any legitimate reason for wanting to come into your BZA and say, hey, we want to do something that really we aren't supposed to do, but here's our necessity for it. There is no necessity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Casey. For clarity's sake, you are currently the acting president of the POA?
That's true.
Okay, very good. Before
Well,
I
you
let you
said
go,
acting.
just
You're saying acting, and yes, I do try to act like the president. Sometimes it comes across, sometimes it doesn't.
very good. Before I let you go, I want to turn it over to my board members. Any questions for Mr. Casey? Okay, very good. And Roger, thank you, Mr. Casey. Roger, we have one more.
Yes, the last speaker will be Danielle Doyle. Oops, excuse me.
Are you there? Mr. or Mrs. Doyle, are you there?
They are not muted.
Okay. Let's assume the Doyles are having communication issues. Darren, I do have a quick procedural question. I'm looking at the comments, and there appears to be a Mr. Anderson who has, looks like he's trying to, and I don't have a problem with this, trying to support the position of the Stonegate POA in the comments, and I just for the record would note that. Is there any issue by us doing that?
No, I don't have any problem with that. I see that comment now.
Very good. Okay. So thank you, Mr. Anderson. We do recognize that you appear to have, or you are stating that you support the position of the Stonegate POA. And okay. Fellow board members, there's a lot to unpack here. I would like to bring Mr. Wrights back up, see if we can address some of these concerns. I would encourage you that we need to focus on the evidence and issue and the information we have for this particular parcel. Although I would state that past experiences with another parcel do set a precedent for maybe the way an owner would treat it. So I'm okay with that thought, but I do want to focus on, it seems like there's maybe some bad blood between these two parties for whatever reason, and that's fine. I'm sorry they don't get along as well as they should, but I think we really should focus our efforts and energy on this particular parcel and this petition in front of us. So with that, let's get Mr. Wrights back up.
He is available.
Mr. Wrights, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you very much. So there was a lot of concerns, and they were consistent with what we had last time. And I guess there is a question, and I'm not sure. Mr. Wrights, are you representing the owner, or are you the owner of the property?
My parents are the owners.
Okay, so
And
you're representing the owners.
That's correct.
Okay. In that regard, there were a lot of concerns, again, raised about the condition of the other properties and how this property will be maintained. Do you have any suggestions on how we could alleviate those concerns?
The only thing that I can offer is, as I've stated before, is that we have property that is immediately adjacent, a lot that is the closest and has the most visibility for this site. I don't know if you can have a map. I tried to put together a little presentation, but lot 333 is a parcel that my parents currently own, and it would be directly looking out the back of that house at this site where this barn is located. Is all I can say is that I don't know and understand why anybody would think that we would do something that was unsightly, untoward on this parcel when we're trying to sell this other one. So,
Mr. Wrights, is that parcel for sale?
yes, it is for sale. It's one of the last one of the last lots in Stonegate that my parents own.
And I don't have it in front of me, but I am curious. What is the listing price for that parcel, approximately?
That one is 139.5. It was just recently increased.
Okay. So your position is that we have a $140,000 investment that we would like to protect, and it would be foolish of us to make a
Garbage dump.
A garbage dump on an adjoining property.
That's correct.
Okay. What other questions do we have for Mr. Wrights?
There was one about, sorry.
I'm sorry. So the property on 334 that you currently have as well, that you are storing equipment in now, that seems to be, an issue with a lot of the neighbors. Is this something that can be cleaned up and used to its full potential? And is this new property on 550 the only other place that you have that you can store equipment?
We do have an ability to keep equipment on the Alersa parcel. However, at some point, one of these parcels is going to be sold. Something's going to happen on one or the other. So then we'll have a situation where we'll need to have a place to keep something. Our preference right now is to keep our equipment, to build a barn, a small barn on 550, and have that as the location for keeping most of our hay equipment. We do intend to remove those buildings. As Mr. Casey stated, he said there wasn't a primary structure. Well, there is a home on that site with where those barns are located. And of course, he also did mention this issue with their misunderstanding about some part of a lake that they think that they owned, and now they're trying to fight us over the ownership. And that was part of what all of this is situated around. So they're trying. It's a lot of that. That's why a lot of these board people are speaking up. Many of them do not live anywhere close to this. I'm sorry, that the new residents, that I didn't get a chance to come around to meet with many of them, but many of them have only lived on that particular area for a very short time, for just a few years. Like I said, if we need to do some additional screening, we're happy to consider that as to look at it as a case by case. I've been out there, like I said, it's very densely wooded. There's a lot of deciduous trees over there. There are not any evergreen type trees, but I could not see Mr. Meyer's house or Mr. Guillen's house last week or the last month. We had Mr. Walton speak. He wouldn't be able to see that barn except for if he had x-ray vision, because he would have to look through somebody else's house to see it. People on the other side of the road are saying that it can affect them. No one has offered any reasonable reasons that they think that are how this would negatively affect their property. Typically, that would be traffic kinds of issues might negatively affect somebody's property, or devalue the property by a different kind of a use. There is none of that is the case. Mr. Casey is a lawyer. He's probably a lot more eloquent than I am, but it is a like I said, I don't believe that their issues that they've raised are really valid. They just want to make sure that the Wrightses don't get to have any use or enjoyment of their property and or have a right to build a structure there without their say so.
What other questions do we have for Mr. Wrights?
I'll go back
to
to, go ahead.
Mr. Papa, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Larry.
Nope.
Okay. What happened? Where is the hay that was baled from the two properties? Where is that now? Or where did it go when it was baled?
Most of it's been sold. There's there's a few remnant bales that are in the Alersa barn.
But when you baled them, did they go in the barn or were they in the field?
I'm sorry.
When you at the time you baled them, were they left in the field or did you put them in the barn there on that first property?
We don't have a barn on 550. That's what we're asking
Right.
for.
No, I understand.
Right.
That's why I'm asking where the hay went.
That's right. I said most of it was sold. There's a few, there are a few bales inside the barn in the Alersa parcel.
But still, you trucked it off as soon as it was baled. It wasn't ever stored there.
We already had it. We already had a person who wanted it. That's correct.
Okay, and then I think it came up several times earlier, but
that's not always the case, though.
No, you're right. I was just trying to clarify if you had storage there.
Mm-hmm.
Then it came up a few times earlier, but the question as to whether or not you would agree not to store things outside on the 550 property. Could you just clarify what you were saying about your position on that?
It's not our intent to keep things parked outside. I asked, they had sent, and when I say they, Mr. Casey, who represents the homeowners association, had sent that, sent a letter, which we asked for some clarification. I asked them about, what if we had a water tank or something like that sitting outside, or spray or whatever temporarily. And he just like, well, you can't have anything outside. Well, for brief periods of time, I don't see how that's unreasonable, but a long-term storage is not the intent to keep things out there parked outside on a long-term basis. If there's, we don't have any intent to keep any vehicles parked outside over there. If that was, if that's a concern I heard about, they don't like my field truck that I parked in the gate to keep people from coming on our Alersa property, which Mrs. Benner referred to as old broken down truck. Well, most people know that you don't park your fuel truck inside of your barn. If it catches fire, then that's a big problem. You typically keep those things outside. Propane tanks and things like that you don't keep inside of a building. There's a reason for that. You keep them far away if you can. It's a, they can paint whatever kind of picture that they want, but the fact of the matter is that it's, I think that it's by and large been somewhat inaccurate.
But I guess my question was, so you wouldn't agree to a condition that you couldn't store things outside, vehicles, equipment?
Well, I again, what would be, say if and I had talked to my parents about this, how long is this stipulation going to be on there? What if somebody wanted to have a horse or two? Could they not keep a trough out there? Could they not have something else? What was equipment? I asked them to try to define equipment. Never got any kind of an answer about that. All of those things are entirely vague and subject to anybody's interpretation, I guess. So, we are going to keep our farm equipment when it's over there, by and large, inside of the barn. I can't say that it's going to be in there every single hour of the day that it's over there, because obviously it's going to be used. Sometimes you just, because of the time of the day, maybe you can't put it in there. But it's not our intent to have things kept outside. I already mentioned about the vandalism, we've had theft and other things. We don't want that to continue to happen. That's why we would like to have a secure place to keep it.
The parcel up there on 334, what is it currently zoned?
The front part of it is about, I think that there's about 12 acres, but the front half of that parcel is zoned for professional business, and the back portion is zoned R3, which is the same zonings that are in Stonegate or adjacent to it by and large.
But you've kept the barn up there because it was grandfathered in before the zoning?
Yeah, there wasn't any reason at that time to remove it.
And then the beauty of Google Earth is I can look down on the parcel as it is, and I can't vote for what day this photo was taken, but I see 6 vehicles sitting out there on the ground. Are those always out there?
No, they aren't out there today.
Like I said, it's
There's a truck there, and I don't know about 6 because I'm not privy to the picture that you're looking at. But
like I said,
it's quite possible that some of that.
Dated. The parcel up there we're talking about on 550. So you rezoned that as part of the rest of the rezoning for Stonegate?
The portion, this parcel, this part of the property was never rezoned. It was R1 from the very beginning. And
it was R1 before you owned it?
Yes, sir.
So you purchased an R1 zone parcel?
As far as I know, the zoning in the Eagle Township area, Boone County had never been changed since the time that my parents purchased that back in 1976. All of Eagle Township.
I'll assume, given your involvement in Stonegate, you're fairly astute to what R1 zoning means as far as what your limitations are, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Any other questions for the petitioner at this particular time? Otherwise, I would like to open up the conversation to my fellow board members.
I have one. Mr. Wrights, how much land do you and your family farm?
We have some hay that we're collecting off of the Alersa parcel and this parcel over here. So we do have some tree nurseries. We do grow some trees around my parents' property. They have about 7 acres, and so I would not. This is not and would not be in some kind of intensive farming operation.
And you mentioned that they are the deciduous trees between the people who live on Deerfield Court and Deerfield Way obstruct the view that they would have of a barn if it were built there. I drove out there a few days ago and I didn't have access to the back of their properties, but I couldn't see because of the trees. However, a month from now, it'll look different. Would they be able to see that barn once the trees lose their leaves?
They would have an obstructed view, as I mentioned before. A lot of those trees are pear trees, and there's also some other kinds of trees, which if you're familiar with those, the pear tree in particular is an early leafing out variety of tree. They also tend to keep their leaves late into the fall, one of the last trees to drop them. Yes, there would be some time possibly that they could see obstructed part of that barn, but it wouldn't be any different than the view of the people's barn on the other side of the road.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Wrights? Okay, very good. Roger, will you move Mr. Wrights back? And I'd like to open it up. Interesting petition in front of us tonight to my fellow board members. As you all understand in detail, the petitioner has the burden to prove 3 conditions in this particular case. And the third one is the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will result in an unnecessary hardship in the use of the property. I'm not sure we've hit that one. The use and value, which is the second one, the use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. And I'm not sure we've hit that one. What I heard Mr. Wright say was that he was expecting, typically when you think about negative value, you typically think about, traffic and things like that. I certainly think that a barn that is maintained in poor condition that is in my backyard, which I could see 3 or 4 months of the year, would affect my property value. That's my opinion. And I'm not sure Mr. Wright has met that obligation. In addition, I feel like Mr. Papa was pretty clear on indicating if he would be willing to add some commitments or conditions to this petition to address some of those current concerns. And I don't feel like there was any movement on that. But my thoughts, I would be curious to see what everyone else is thinking about what we've heard tonight.
I concur. I don't think that they've been met. I think that it is surprising that the developer of a very nice home development there now wishes to do something which those homeowners, many of which don't want. And I don't believe that I would want to look out at a barn which might have equipment sitting around it part of the time as well. So I do not believe that those 2 points have been met.
Thank you, Mr. Mundy. Any other thoughts?
I agree as well.
Thank you, Ms. Campins. If there's no further discussion, I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
I move that docket number 2020-14-DSD development standards variance in order to allow the construction of an accessory structure to permanently exist without the benefit of a primary structure in the rural low-density single-family residential zoning district be denied as presented.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Thank you, Mr. Papa. So we have a vote for denial. So a yay vote or an aye vote is voting to accept the motion, which is to deny the petition. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Wayne for a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Papa?
Aye.
Mrs. Campins?
Aye.
Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Mundy?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion is denied. We're going to move on to our next docket. And Mr. Papa, I apologize. I should have given you a little more heads up. The next item on our agenda is docket number 2020-26-DSV for the property located at 90 North 6th Street. I'm going to recuse myself from this hearing. So I believe, Mr. Papa, that puts you in charge for the temporary moment. So I apologize for not giving you more heads up, but I know you're well qualified. Wayne, is it appropriate? I'm going to turn off my camera and I'm going to mute my microphone so I don't participate in this conversation. If you want to do that on your side, or Roger, if you want to do that on your side, I'm certainly amenable to that as well. So we're fully transparent.
I will do that on this end.
Thank you very much.
So Wayne and Darren and Roger, will you make sure you help me if I make a misstep here? You want to hear first from the petitioner to explain the petition?
I am moving Steve and Kim Smith, giving them the ability to speak.
Hi, this is Steve Smith.
Yes, please. Yes, your name and address, please.
90 North 6th Street, Zionsville.
And could you describe the petition we have before us?
Oh, sure. Basically, we're deviating from the required setbacks with the aggregate side yards and the back of the home. So we're adding to the back of the home, keeping the same width of the house, but extending back approximately 25 feet. And basically taking the existing structure and adding a front porch to the front of the home. And we're going to, in addition, with the garage where it's positioned there, we would like to add a second car garage in towards the backyard, which would add about 7-8 feet towards going toward the north or towards the home. And the project will basically be gutting the entire existing structure and then basically rebuilding the structure back to a current home.
Do board members have questions for the Smiths?
So could I say that you're going to add to the front, add to the back, and add to the garage? Is that right?
That's correct.
And is the garage, it's a single car garage now, is it going to be demoed and then a new one built?
At this point, we weren't sure if we were going to demo the entire garage or just keep part of it. That's not been determined.
But it's in the same location, just expanding it?
Yes, just expanding it approximately 8 feet.
Is the home going to be raised at all, or is it still going to be a 2-story?
It's a 1-story with a basement, and our addition will be adding to the back of the home with a basement. That'll be a little over 700 square feet, and then the addition to the back will also just be on the main floor.
Okay.
The front facade will increase in height a little bit, just to make the roof line appear more attractive from the road. And as Mr. Mundy said, there will be a front porch added to the left side of the home or to the south side. It's actually on the facing the road. It's just extending the front porch so it's someplace to sit on the front of the home.
Okay.
Other questions for the Smiths?
Real quick, is the basement going to have some bedrooms in it?
Yes, there is designed a family room and 1 bedroom down there. Yes, sir.
Okay.
And a bathroom down there.
Any others? Okay. Roger or Wayne, do we have any remonstrators?
We do have one hand raised. It is Jeff Brown. I will allow move Mr. Brown so he can speak.
Mr. Brown, can you state your name and address and then tell us what your thoughts are?
Sure, yeah. My name's Jeff Brown. I live at 100 North 6th Street, so I'm the neighbor to the north. And I wouldn't necessarily call me a remonstrator, but you know, when I look at the plans, everything really looks great. I am just primarily concerned about the large amount of water that's going to be displaced with the addition. And looking at the plans, I'm not 100% certain that it wouldn't flow into my yard unless there was some sort of plan to handle the drainage and make sure that all the water was pushed out towards the road as opposed to flowing north into my backyard.
Okay. Do you have other concerns, Mr. Brown?
No, that's it. I think everything looks really great.
Any questions from the board?
Are you lower? Is your lot lower, Mr. Brown?
Yeah, I believe it's lower. I mean, honestly, that's just visually, looking at it visually. They do have some like dotted lines on their plans that I don't know what they are, but to me, they look kind of like water flow, and it looked like all the water flow. If it is water flow, it looked like it went right into my backyard.
Okay. Other questions for Mr. Brown or comments? Okay, thank you, Mr. Brown.
Sure.
Roger, do we have others with their hands raised?
There are no other hands raised.
Okay, thank you. What's appropriate next? Is it the staff report?
Yes.
Is that Wayne or Roger? Or who's
I'll
doing the staff?
the staff report.
Thank you.
Certainly. Staff is supportive of the petition as filed. This matter provides for the expansion of a home along existing setbacks. Certainly staff sees that as a supportable action given the setbacks exist already. Certainly it's new information tonight regarding the potential to fully demolish the garage. Not that that's an issue per se, but certainly the constructability on soil that's been disturbed might complicate things for the petitioners. So certainly the evaluation of exactly where that the cost benefit analysis of replacing that garage versus dealing with disturbed soil is just something to look at from the building code. And then speaking again to the building code, talking about drainage, certainly the ordinance, the town's ordinance adopted state of Indiana would require positive drainage from the improvements. The drawings that are in the file, and certainly what I believe the interested party was speaking to is the existing, I'm assuming there are existing contours that were drawn on by a design professional related to the proposed addition. Certainly the petitioner can speak to what efforts are going to be employed to manage the drainage on their property. But again, staff is supportive of the petition as it's been filed, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. DeLong?
Do we do any kind of lot coverage ratio on this? Just for, it looks like, given everything we've seen in the past, this is one of the few where they should be well under. It's typically driven the concern about drainage in the village.
Yes, we would have done that analysis on the intake. The paper file is in the room as to where those calculations would be in the file, but yes, we did not see a lot coverage issue with this particular file.
Does this area have storm drains in it? Do we know?
I'm not aware of storm drains in this particular area now.
It might alleviate the neighbors' concern if, I'm assuming they'll have a sump pit in the basement of this house. We can make sure that, do we allow the discharge to go into the storm sewers here?
It is not, no.
Not encouraged? I guess my comment is if they can make sure they take the sump out into the backyard and sort of away from the adjoining neighbor, that actually would probably alleviate a lot of issues the adjoining neighbor might ever have. The other question I've got is, we make a motion for this. I'd like to call out that we are going to allow the intrusion of a window well. So Wayne, in your calculations for the side yard setback, did you include the window well for the lower level base bedroom?
Historically, the town counted.
I understand historically what we've done. Have we included that in the calculations?
For the setback?
Correct.
For the setback, no. For the lot coverage, I don't have those calculations in front of me to see if Chrissy or another staff member included that square footage or not.
I'm not so much concerned about the square footage. I'm sorry, were you saying the square footage of the house?
Right, the square footage of the window well, in addition to the totality of the existing and proposed improvements.
I'm more concerned about the window well and its proximity to the property line. So there's a variance for the side yard setbacks, correct?
Correct.
So are we calculating those setbacks off of the foundation of the house or the edge of the window well?
The foundation of the.
Okay. part of my concern is I disagree. I think the window wells should set the edge of the foundation of the house, since it's a structural feature and enables the basement area to become livable. To qualify as a livable space. So if we do this, I'd want to include that. Is my comment.
Other questions for Mr. Long or comments?
Larry, that would even squeeze the side yard setback down further.
Right.
Which means that we're not representing it the same way as it's represented tonight. The other question I would have would be, can that window well be moved to the rear of the house and avoid that?
That'd be a question for the petitioner.
The questions, comments, staff report? No? Then could we bring the Smiths back to address those two questions?
Sure.
Mr. Pop, I will do that. I will also let you know that during the discussion regarding drainage, there were 2 hands raised. So I don't know if they would have information.
Oh, okay.
Those questions, they're not from the petitioner, but they are from other attendees of the meeting. So would you like to hear those?
Yep. Yes. Let's take those.
I will start with Jeff Brown.
Hi there. Yeah, so I'm the neighbor from to the north again. And just to give some kind of feedback on the property behind our backyards is higher than our backyards. And so my bigger concern is not really, I guess my concern isn't really the sump up in the basement. It's really more of just how do they get the water from their backyard to the storm sewer, which is in the front of the house. So there are storm sewers, you know, definitely on the street in front of the house that take up all the water as it comes down the hill. So I'm just slightly concerned that it's going to, rather than flow from their backyard into, you know, into their front yard, into the street, it's going to flow into my yard. That's really the only issue I have. Other than that, I think it looks really great.
Okay.
The other hand is from Mark Walters. Mr. Walters?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. State your name and address and then let us know your thoughts.
Sure, my name is Mark Walters. I live at 545 West Poplar Street. And actually, I have 2 things. One, I'm speaking in support of this petition. I am the chairman of the Zionsville Historic Preservation Committee. And while this home is not listed as historic, my understanding is it was originally to be sold as a potential tear down. And I just want to say we commend the current owners, the Smiths, for wanting to do an addition and restoration on this home as opposed to tearing it down, because it does add to the streetscape. I happen to live right around the corner, and it does add to the streetscape. It's a very nice home, and I think they'll make it a lot nicer. So I just wanted to go on record as saying that. Secondly, I do know there are storm sewers in the area because there was a substantial amount of work done on Poplar Street just recently to stop some stormwater issues that were actually affecting my property. So I'm pretty aware that there's storm sewers in the area that take the water off of 6th Street and in some cases route it down Poplar Avenue. So just wanted to make that known.
Thank you for your comments. Board members, do you have any questions for Mr. Walters?
Just make a comment about the sump pump. If they have a basement now, I assume there's a sump pump there, and I would think that they could route if they put in another sump pit and a new basement, route it to the same place. So if it's going to the storm sewer, out to the street, to the curb, to empty into a storm sewer, I would assume that'd be the same route that you plan to take with the new sump pit and the new portion of the basement.
Is that a question for Mr. Walters, or does anybody have one?
Well, I think the owner, I guess, would be the only one that might be able to identify where they would be emptying that sump pit.
Right. I just didn't know if we were done with Mr. Walters to move him back.
Yes.
Okay, we're ready to bring back the Smiths and see what they have to say about these two things. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, are you back with us?
Yes, we are.
Okay, so we had a couple questions. One was, what are your thoughts on the drainage issue? The neighbor raised some concerns about that.
Okay, currently I'm trying to get my builder on this webinar. Have you had anybody else tap in?
We would need your builder to raise his hand.
Oh.
Able to join.
All right. Just call her, please.
What?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, just so a refresher, just to remind, the other question we had for you or your builder was, I think Mr. Monday had a question about if the window well was movable to a different side of the building.
To the rear.
I think it could be moved. It's a bedroom that window well is that we're speaking about. So I believe, I am not a builder, but I believe the window could be moved to the rear of the home. Yes.
Do you think your builder's joining us shortly, or?
She was trying to connect online, so I guess we're going to try to call her right now, see if she'll pick up, and then she can speak. Would it be all right if she spoke here, if you can hear her?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Hi, Betsy. Hey, this is, I'm on the meeting, on the webinar with the town, and they have a few questions. Can you try to help out with some?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yep.
go ahead and ask the questions. This is Betsy Pitts.
Well, first of all, just since you're on the phone, just to make you aware, you're on a recorded Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. And we had some questions for the Smiths about their building that were raised, and one was, a neighbor really liked the design, but had some questions about the drainage and was concerned, wanted to make sure that the drainage wasn't going to increase or be directed newly to their property.
Right. Okay.
And sorry, but before that, could you, I know you said your name, but could you say your name and who you're with and the business address of that?
Sure. This is Betsy Pitts with BP Custom Homes. My address, did you need that?
Yeah, just the business address is fine.
445 West Ash Street in Zionsville.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. So, in part of the packet that I was getting ready to submit for permits to address the drainage issues, currently, the drainage, the way the lot is graded is just, one big slope from the west side of the property all the way out around the house to the street. So during construction, we will do the addition and hopefully put in a patio. And at that time, the rear yard will be graded to create fall away from the house and the patio area, obviously. And then we will also channel any excess drainage around the north side of the yard into an existing swale exiting into the front yard that has a mature maple tree. So that will actually be created.
Okay. Do we have follow-up questions from the board on that particular issue?
So that'll all be on the Smith's property?
The drainage from their house, yes.
Yes.
And their backyard, yes.
Okay. Mr. Mundy, did you want to ask your question about the window well?
Yeah, the window well for the bedroom, which will be placed in the new basement.
Right.
Question has come up about the side yard setback, and that window well, if included in the structure, reduces the side yard setback even further. Could the window well be moved to the rear of the house to avoid that?
Yes. It could. I mean, currently there's an air conditioner sitting on that side, so I guess it won't be any worse than that, but if that would appease someone, it could be moved around to the backyard.
Once again, air conditioners aren't a structural feature of a home, whereas any kind of retaining wall being put in to create a livable structure in the basement is structural. Can't take it out. You can move an air conditioner. So that's our concern when it comes to these side yard setbacks.
Right.
What are the questions from board members?
Good.
How difficult do you see that being to move the well to the back?
Not difficult. We just need to have egress in that bedroom, and it'll just be on a different outside wall, you know. So I think that's fine, and it should not impede their patio area. So that's doable. That's just calling my architect and having him move it and reprint those for my foundation company.
Thank you. What are the questions from the board members? None? Any for the Smiths? Don't see any. Thank you for joining us by phone.
Sure. Thank you for asking me. Sorry I couldn't get on the Zoom call. I could hear you guys and see you, but I don't know, you couldn't see me.
Okay, no, thank you for joining. That was very helpful. There are no other questions for the Smiths or their professionals? Move them back and then we'll have board discussion. What comments does the board have?
I move to approve. Can we make it with the condition that the storm drain, the window well is moved, and then the storm drain or the drainage is corrected? Can that be added as a condition of the approval?
We might need Darren's help with the wording, because I think they're saying the drainage is already correct.
In the
Just
plans?
make sure that that's a condition.
Yeah, I'm not sure what language you would need to use there, but you can address it however you see fit. Sounds like it may already comply, or certainly will have to comply by the time it's built.
Okay.
Was the one individual who was concerned about it still online, that we could ask him if he's satisfied with the answer?
Mr. Brown is still available. I can allow him to speak.
Do.
Okay. Yeah, actually, her answer was exactly what I was hoping she wouldn't say, which was that it was going to flow north. So that the plan was all the water would flow north, which is...
I guess our concern is, Mr. Brown, is there an existing drainage swale from the rear of the property is out to the street.
I don't think it's low. So I don't think her backyard, when you say swale, you mean lower between both our yards?
Correct.
Yeah, no. So I don't believe that their backyard and our backyard, it's lower between our yards. I think their yard is higher than our backyard. It's lower between the houses, but the backyard itself is fairly even. Like I feel like right now we're kind of taking equal amount of water in the backyard. So, or theirs is slightly higher than ours. So I guess what I'm suggesting is I feel like something needs to be put in place that moves the water from their backyard to the front yard, not north to our yard. So some sort of like, I don't know, French drain or something along the lines that gets it. I think the question was, will the water all drain on their property? If that's the case, that's great. And I'm perfectly fine with that. I have no problem. Based on how it is now, I'm not 100% certain that that's the case, but I think it could be created. So if she's suggesting they're going to create a lower by grading, I did hear her say something about grading. So if they're going to create a ditch on her property that moves it from the back to the front, that would be awesome.
And it looks like you've got a similar situation as this property where on your garage and your driveway sit awful tight to the south property line, correct?
Right. Yeah. So what we have is we did that exact thing. Is we put a pipe that runs through our addition from our backyard through our crawl space out to the side on Poplar and then runs down to 6th into the storm drain. So we can move our water from our backyard out of our backyard, but I'm just afraid, if we're going to take on another house's, displaced water, that's going to be problematic. Right now, it'll get to be 6 inches before it hits the drain level. And then once it gets to that, it drains out.
Okay. Other questions for Mr. Brown or more comments from Mr. Brown? Not, then we move Mr. Brown back and continue the board discussion.
Mr. Papa, I do want to interject that the petition in front of you this evening and any future petitions that are going to be discussed this evening that are having their first initial conversation with you, all petitions have been facilitated via first-class mail, which is a deviation from your rules of procedure. You've been doing this routinely for months now due to the COVID situation. Therefore, a waiver would be necessary to be granted this evening related to the use of first-class notice. It's just something else to mix into your actions this evening.
Thanks for that reminder. We take that before regular action. Mr. Chad, what do you prefer?
I don't think it matters. Mr. Pop, I think you can address that, certainly before your motion, I guess, but anytime before that's fine.
And is that for each petition or can they be done in a group?
I think you can do them as a group.
And maybe we should get that out of the way then.
Might make sense. Can you suggest a proper form for that motion? Someone can make that motion. I think just a simple motion to waive your typical rules of procedure in order to allow notice by first-class mail for all of the matters on the agenda this evening. Something like that. Wayne, does that work on your end?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Can we say so moved?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
You, Mr. Jones for the motion and Mr. Mundy for the second. We do that by roll call, Mr. DeLong?
Yes. Mrs. Campins?
Aye. Yes.
Okay, Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Mundy?
Aye.
Mr. Papa?
Aye.
That works. Thank
I'd
you.
also like to clarify, Mr. Chad, so we have one member recused, we have 4 members. How many votes in a particular direction do we need to approve
Still
or
takes
deny?
majority. Still takes 3 of the entire board.
Okay, just wanted to clarify before a vote.
Sure. Yep.
Okay, is there further discussion, or was there maybe Ms. Campen started a motion?
Started. Is there, is the petitioner still available?
Yes.
Let me bring them back.
Here we are.
So we've gotten into these kind of situations before. This time we'll be a little more vocal. It sounds like that within your site, there's sufficient elevation change from the west edge of the property out to 6th Street, that things generally, water drainage generally heads towards 6th once it gets around the house. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. There's a fairly simple fix that involves basically a little bit of perforated drain tile, some stone placed down that north edge of the house that would give the water a little something to go to. And then you could open side it as it gets closer to 6, which I think would alleviate the concerns of the neighbors to the north about water standing there between the 2 properties. It wouldn't be particularly expensive to do. Does that sound agreeable if we make some sort of recommendation and include something like that?
Yes.
Okay. And then the moving of the I can't think of the term, the window well to the west end of the house, does that sound like it's agreeable?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, other questions for the Smiths while we have them? All right, move them back. We'll continue the discussion or hear a motion.
You looking for a motion, Mr. Vice President?
Yes, if there's no further discussion yet.
I'll move that docket number 2020-26-DSV Development Standard Variance in order to provide for the remodel and addition to an existing single-family home and garage, which 1, deviates from the required side and aggregate yard setbacks in the urban residential village zoning district, RV, be approved as presented with the additional changes of the window well being moved from the north side to the rear of the home, and that a perforated tile French drain be part of the final excavation work there in order to alleviate water and move it to the front of the home and the storm sewer.
Mr. Mundy, you, at least on my end, you cut out for just a split second when you said either approved or denied. Was that an approval?
Approved as presented with the changes that I mentioned.
Right, I missed the one word. I want to make sure it was in the record.
It's a big deal.
Yeah. Is there a second to Mr. Mundy's motion?
Second.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's
Okay, second by Mr. Jones. Any additional discussion before we take the roll? Okay, Mr. DeLong?
Is it Jones?
Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Mundy?
Aye.
Mr. Papa?
Aye.
Mrs. Campens?
Aye.
Passes 4-0. Congratulations, Smith family. Mr. Wolf taking the gavel back.
Can you see me and hear me?
There is.
Very good. Mr. Papa, thank you very much. I appreciate your assistance. We are moving on to the next item on our agenda, which is docket number 2020-27-DSV for the property located at 9095 East 350 South.
I promoted Justin and Vanessa Pataki.
Mr. and Mrs. Pataki, welcome. You appear to be muted. Let's get you, see if we've got, there you are. Wonderful. Would you please state your name and address for the record?
Justin and Vanessa Pataki, 9095 East 350 South, Zionsville.
Very good. And I noticed that on your petition, we have two different variance requests. Would you please articulate what you're asking for tonight?
Yes. The first request is we are asking to replace a existing structure with a bigger structure that will exceed the allowable accessory square footage. And secondary, the actual replacement structure will deviate from the overall height. So we're asking to be able to deviate from the required maximum permissible height associated with the accessory structure.
Very good and very well said. Can you please explain why you need the additional square footage? So let's start with the first one, which was the extra square footage. What is the requirement or the need for that?
Overall, just storage and then just growth of family, really. As our petition stated, this house was built in the late 60s. The previous owner noticed that there was a lack of storage. Our house was built pretty much without closets, so we do not have areas to park our vehicles, lawn equipment, patio furniture, sports equipment, overall just hobby stuff. We are already at maximum capacity where we stand. Most our winter clothes and our spring clothes are stored out there, and we swap back and forth for seasons. So we are at capacity as it currently states.
I'm sorry, did you say that, when was your home built?
1969.
69, okay. So architects in 1969 did not add adequate closet space.
No, they did not.
Duly noted. So the next one we have in front of us is the height, which while you're describing the height, maybe you could describe what the structure is going to look like?
The structure will be a 30 by 50 metal pole barn. It will be white in color with silver accent trim and silver roof. It will have a front load garage door and a metal garage 3-foot metal door to access in the front. And it will also have a garage access in the back. The reason for 2 garages is the front loading will be so we can park vehicles off our current current driveway, and the back is so we can pull the lawnmowers in and out and the equipment in and out of the back of the garage, so we don't have to move vehicles to get that stuff out.
Very good. And what is the nature of the height?
Simply to be able to park a vehicle in there. Our current house is a ranch with a garage opening of just over 7 feet, and we are unable to park. I am unable to park my truck in there currently without taking the top off. So I'm asking to build a building that is 1 foot taller than our house, so I can move the header space up and allow for an 8-foot garage door instead of a 7, so that I might park my vehicle inside.
Okay, so it's really a result of just what a modern garage would need or modern vehicle storage would need.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Very good. What other questions do we have for the petitioner at this time?
Is the walkway going to connect the 2 structures?
Initially, we were going to add an additional breezeway to connect the structures, but we were told that if we just asked for a secondary variance for the height, that we do not need to do that. So no, if we are requested the height variance, we would not connect it currently.
And this new structure is replacing a barn that has been removed, or a garage, is that correct?
Correct. We had a detached 2-car garage that was there previously. And it's just to replace the existing structure that was there currently, yes.
Okay.
And do you have the approximate square footage of that? I think it's actually maybe listed here.
Of the old garage?
Correct.
It was 26 by 24, so whatever that quick math comes out to be.
I don't do math in public. Firm policy.
Me either. 500 and change.
What other questions do we have for the petitioner at this time? Seeing none, Roger, are there any people to speak for or against this particular position?
We'll wait one moment to see if there are any hands raised.
Thank you.
There are none.
Very good. Then it might be appropriate for us to have the staff report.
Certainly, staff is supportive of the petition as it's been filed. Certainly for the two items that are noted in the staff report, the existence of other properties in the area that enjoy the same deviations that are requested this evening, and the other item being the requested numbers, be it the height and the square footage, are minimal compared to the overall fabric of the community. Certainly, the item that the petitioner has specifically noted, the architectural standards of a couple decades ago, are a bit different and challenging and present some hurdles to work through for property ownership. And we're certainly happy to see something like this move forward and facilitate modern storage.
Thank you, Wayne. And just for a point of clarification, the height requirement is based on the height of the primary structure. So if this were a two-story home as opposed to a one-story ranch, we wouldn't have a problem with the height of the accessory structure?
That's correct. And certainly I think that what the petitioner was alluding to is if they were to have attached it, then there might be a different conversation to be having this evening. It gives the petitioner much more flexibility to detach it. And then if they choose to make a change in the future, that's a non-issue.
Very good. Any questions for staff? Seeing none, any discussion amongst the group? Before we move forward, Darren, do we want to, I noticed that the recommended motion doesn't specify the increase in is not specific to the increase in accessory square footage, nor is it specific to the height. Should we include that?
I think as long as you do either approved as presented, according to the plans presented, or specify the specific sizes, either way you want to go.
Very good. So to my fellow board members, if you would include that in a recommend, or if you are in favor of this petition, if you would include that it be approved based, or I'm sorry, as specified in the report. Okay. If there's no other discussion, I would entertain a motion.
I motion
Thank you.
to approve.
Ms. Campins, will you do me a favor and please just read the recommended motion? If you
Yes.
don't, Darren gets real mad at me because we're not specific enough.
No, I can. Yes,
you.
I move that docket number 2020-27 DSB Development Standards Variance to provide for the construction of an accessory structure which, 1, exceeds the allowable accessory square footage, and 2, deviates from the required maximum permissible height associated with an accessory structure in the low-density single-family residential zoning district, R1, be approved as specified in the report, as presented.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Wayne, can I turn it over to you, please?
Yes. Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Mundy?
Aye.
Mr. Papa?
Aye.
Mr. Campins?
Ms. Campins, were you and I vote?
Aye, yes, I'm sorry.
Perfect, thank you. Motion passes. Mr. and Mrs. Pataki, very good luck on your project going forward. And thank you. Next item on our agenda is docket number 2020-28-DSV for the property located at 335 West Ash Street.
Introducing Eric Lamb.
Very good. Mr. Lamb, are you there?
Hello, can you hear me?
We can. Would you please state your name and address for the record?
Yes, Eric Lamb, 335 West Ash Street in Zionsville.
Very good. And in front of us, it appears that we have a request for increasing the lot coverage. Could you please describe what you've asked for?
Absolutely. So our petition is to increase lot coverage to 39.9% from the current 36.8% coverage. We like to add a second-story deck to the back of the house. The deck would be made of wood. It would be about 9 by 14 foot. So it would come off the house 9 foot and would be about 14 foot wide. And there would be stairs down along the side of the house down to ground level. The picture's worth 1,000 words. And so I think we have a rendering attached in our submission that might be helpful. It's more or less just a pretty straightforward, simple deck with a railing around the border, and that's really about it. The reason we need a deck is because our house is on a slope. We're on the corner of Ash and 3rd Street in the Village, and the front door's on Ash Street. It's a pretty busy street, and it's away from most of the activity in the area. It's the only exterior door on the main level of the house. So the only other way of entering or leaving the house would be for us to go down the stairs, walk through the basement, through the garage. And if we wanted to then go to the backyard, we'd have to go through the gate into the backyard. So it's pretty inconvenient. We have young children who like playing in the backyard. And, if somebody gets hurt or if there's an issue, it's quite a chore to make our way all the way down through the house to go to the backyard to help them out. So the primary purpose of the deck would be, we would be installing a door. It's not shown in the rendering, but there's currently windows where the door would go. So that would be an additional part of this project. So we could exit the main level of the house onto the deck, down the stairs, and we're in the backyard. I think a more recent need we've discovered is we have elderly relatives, grandparents that enjoy visiting with the children, and we're trying to maintain safe socializing with them, and so having an outdoor space would also add to that. So it wouldn't be a large space, but we could likely have a table up there, a few chairs, that kind of thing. It's consistent with the style of the neighbors have that are also on our back alley. Because of the slope, I think at least 2 of the other houses have a deck that with a second-story deck to allow for them to go down to their backyards from their main level as well. So it seems, in my opinion, to be fitting for the area. It would have a similar look and feel, that kind of thing. We've had a number of neighbors sign letters in support, and I think that's about it.
Okay, so I do want to clarify a couple of points. There is in Exhibit 3, or at least part of Exhibit 3, there is a rendering, and it does appear to have the deck. And what you said was that it doesn't show the door. So there is an intent to put the door there, correct?
Correct. Yeah, if you would look at, trying to find we submitted some photographs as well of the house. And if you were to look at, for example, the one that's labeled view from backyard, I think it's probably the best option. You'll see 2 fairly large sliding glass doors, which are not included in the rendering. And those would be replaced with essentially like a patio style sliding door.
Okay. And as we look at the findings of fact for this particular petition, the one we always, especially when we're talking about lot coverage, is number 3. And what I believe the way you addressed the 3rd finding of fact, which is the strict applications in the terms of the zoning ordinance, will result in an unnecessary hardship. To paraphrase that, what you're stating is the fact that because the home is on a sloped lot, you currently only have one egress for the main level, which is on a fairly substantial street. Is that correct? Did I accurately surmise that?
Correct, yes. The hardship we face is the limited egress to and from the house, ingress and egress from the house. Correct.
Okay, you stated that much better than I did. Much more, whatever. Okay, moving on. Any questions for the petitioner at this time? Okay, I'm seeing none. Roger, do we have anyone who wants to participate in our conversation?
I will wait one moment to see if any hands are raised.
Thank you, sir.
And there are none.
Thank you. May we have the staff report?
Certainly. Staff is supportive of the petition as indicated in the staff report, and certainly as the petitioner has provided, this request is very unique. Certainly a second story deck is not certainly an item that you do see within the village, within the downtown area. However, it's not typical, but certainly you do see some elevated decks, and certainly here in this part of the village, you do have this to compare to. With that in mind, staff is supportive of the petition. We do have the concerns we've outlined in the staff report. Certainly the ordinance provides for wooden decks to deviate from lot coverage if they have certain characteristics. This would have some of those certain characteristics. However, it is elevated, and certainly a deck like this would, I guess, if at greater within 6 inches, would qualify as something that would be not counted against lot coverage. Would give you the 2% bonus, if you will. However, in this case, it is elevated, and that maybe not with this ownership, but future ownership might lend itself towards being enclosed or providing for some sort of impervious surface underneath the deck, which would be counterproductive. Certainly the massing and the architectural features as indicated by the petitioner this evening sound very compatible with the area. However, potential conversion to conditioned living space, 3-seasoned room, or having some sort of awning system might provide characteristics that are atypical and might be a different conversation. Certainly this lot itself has frontage on 3rd Street and Ash. The frontage on 3rd Street has some square footage that appears as it's part of the lot, even though it is public right-of-way. So there's a couple different characteristics here that really lend themselves to supporting this petition and reducing the overall appearance of the deviation that's being requested from the lot coverage. Staff, again, is supportive, does have concerns about the siting and the improvements as I've indicated, plus what we've indicated in the staff report related to constructability in terms of conflicts with underground utilities, the presence of the meter base, and the glazing issues with impact. Some of that will change, obviously, with the slider door, patio door system. The electric service provider will determine the distances that are necessary from the meter base, but these are all constructability issues that will be talked about during a building permit process. Certainly want to bring those up at least for conversation, maybe not for solution tonight, but certainly noting those for the record here. Again, staff is supportive of the petition. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Wayne. I do have a couple comments or questions. I think they're going to turn into questions. So as I read what the staff provided us and listened to your conversation, staff is supportive of this because elevated deck, but it has materials that will allow water to pass through. And so it's, what I would call a traditional deck. But if it were to be enclosed and become an enclosed space below it, staff would not be supportive of that. Is that correct?
That's correct. And certainly the constructability, the bearing system is not intended to provide for a 3-seasons room, but certainly it's noting any recommendation for your consideration, certainly structuring any limits on how this deck is to live on in perpetuity would be advantageous.
Yeah, so I think you're driving to where I'm trying to get to. Is there something we should include in the motion? I generally, as I look at this, I do understand the hardship, and I also appreciate the fact that the lot is unique because it does have a shared common space in front of it that appears to be a part of the lot, but it is not. It is, but it does add more square footage to the appearance of it. But is there something that we should include in the motion to protect this from being more intensively used?
I think your motion can just be reflective of the petition as it's been filed. It shows no activities underneath the deck. It would remain as open space in grass or some sort of landscaping. There's no other alterations that are happening to the exterior of the home, with the exception of the installation of the patio door system that the petitioner has indicated. Certainly, there's been no reference from the petitioner. I don't know their thoughts on their future intentions with the outdoor space that's underneath the deck or the stairs, or if they've even had an opportunity to explore the constructability items that I've brought up this evening with a professional contractor.
Very good. So you're of the impression that if a positive motion is made, that if we include approve as recommended by staff based on the findings of fact, that would cover us, that would protect this from being more intensively used.
And as illustrated in the drawings that are within the filing.
The report present, yeah. Okay, very good. Any other comments or questions for staff? One other random question, Wayne, and I apologize. I think the answer is no, but if this deck happened to be cantilevered off the structure, it would still count against the square footage, correct?
That is correct. The building code would limit that cantilevered system to no more than 2 feet. So something like this would need bearing. The post and beam system that's proposed, but yes, it would still count against lot coverage.
Very good. Any other comments amongst the group or discussion amongst the group?
A question for Wayne. If at sometime in the future, the owner of the home decided they wanted to make it a 3-season or a 4-season room, would require a permit, isn't that correct, to put a roof over it and walls?
Correct. It would require a permit and walls, or a permit and to capture the features that you're representing, but certainly having clarity this evening in the motion related to that future conversation is of great benefit to any future and future owners.
Okay.
Yeah, so if we're clear in our motion tonight, they would need to come back and see us again to add walls to it. And I think that is the intent of the staff, and I would agree with that concept. Any other questions or comments? If not, I will entertain a motion.
There you go. I move the docket number 2020-28-DSV, a petition for the development standard variance to provide for the addition of a 126 square foot second story deck to a single family home, which would, 1, exceed the permitted lot coverage of 35%, increasing the lot coverage to 39.9% in the urban residential village zoning district, RV, be approved as recommended by staff based on the findings and based on the staff report as presented.
Very good, Mr. Jones, thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
I second.
Thank you, Ms. Campins. Wayne, I will turn it over to you.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Mundy?
Aye.
Mr. Papa?
Aye.
Mrs. Campins?
Aye.
Mr. Wolf?
Aye. Mr. Lamb, good luck with your project. Motion carries. The next item on our agenda is docket number 2020-29 DSV for the property located at 370 West Cedar Street.
For this petition, we actually have the husband and wife, and they have logged on because of job responsibility, 2 different points of access.
Mr. and Mrs. Thorpe, are you there?
Yes, this is Barb Thorpe. And our property is 370 West Cedar Street in Zionsville.
Very good. And would you please describe what is in front of us tonight?
Yes, we are hoping to restore our front porch back to the way it looked in the 1940s, which means that our setback would move from, at the moment, it is 7 feet 10 inches. And by improving upon our porch, the setback to the sidewalk would then be 6 feet 6 inches. It would be expanding the front porch from 54 square feet to 122 square feet and adding a cover.
Very good. Could you describe the porch in your words, or what you're doing and what it looked like and how you're trying to get back there?
Sure. So in the papers that I submitted, there's actually a picture from the 1940s that was sent to the previous homeowner back in the 80s. And the little boy that's on the front porch is the one who sent it to her in the 80s and said, this is what the porch looked like. And so the side porch, which I also included a picture of that, has been restored and kind of kept to the look that the front porch was. And so we actually found the same posts and the same brackets that are on the side porch, and we'll be moving those, purchasing those and adding those then to the front porch and have it covered. The one difference is back in the 40s, the top window, the upstairs window, was actually a door, and that's how they got their furniture upstairs. And so that's actually a window now. And our roof will not be a patio. It'll just be a roof, a covered porch.
Okay, very good. And as part of this project, I'm looking at exhibits,
yes,
I believe 5. There is an existing kind of sidewalk on your property, kind of a landscaping sidewalk to the rear of the house.
Yes, currently there is a cement sidewalk that is pretty beaten up and cracked and actually slopes towards the home. And so a part of that project is actually taking that cement out because it just puts water next to the house. So we will be taking out the sidewalk that connects the current front porch to the current side porch and replacing it with just pavers, old bricks that will just then create a small walkway from the sidewalk, the front walk to the side porch.
Okay. So if I understand things correctly, and rarely do I, but I think what you're asking for is to move the porch approximately 1 foot 4 inches closer to the setback. Is that what I heard? Okay, very good. And the porch will expand in width from its current size up to, I think it's 18 feet?
Correct.
And it will be covered?
Yes.
Okay. What questions do we have for the petitioner?
There'll be a flat roof on top of the porch.
It will have a slight angle to it to help with displacing water. And it will have the proper drainage for it.
Any other questions for the petitioner?
So you did find the original brackets though? For the
Well, so the previous homeowner took down the original, obviously the original brackets didn't make it 150 years. And so they replaced the ones on the side porch. And so we were actually able to find the ones on the side porch, the manufacturer of those that are there currently. And so those are the ones we will use then on the front porch.
I apologize, Ms. Thorpe. Did you specify when was this home built?
It was built in 1870.
Wonderful.
We spent the last 10 months restoring and renovating the interior of the home. And now we're hoping to do the exterior.
Just in time for winter.
That's right.
But if you were spending 10 minutes on the interior, you probably thought it would only take 4, and we all know how those projects go. What other questions do we have for the petitioner at this time? Seeing none. Roger, is there anyone else who would like to participate in our conversation?
We'll give a moment for hands to be raised if there are any. There are none.
Thank you. Wayne, would you share with us the staff report?
I do see that we have a late hand raising.
Oh, okay.
It's Mr. Zelonis. I do want to call that to the board's attention.
Perfect.
I have made it available for Mr. Zelonis to join us.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can, and would you please state your name and address for the record?
Sure, Mark Salonis at 40 South 3rd Street, Zionsville. And I just wanted to offer my vote of support for this project. We have watched the very thorough and careful restoration and renovations of this very important house. It's one that is contributing to the village's historic makeup, and very impressed with what the Thorpes have done, and have every good confidence that they will do an equally good job on this porch on the front of the house. And I'm looking at that photograph that Mrs. Thorpe mentioned, and it's exciting to think that that will be back here into the fabric of the village. So I just wanted to vote my support for it.
Thank you, Mr. Zelonis. We certainly appreciate you participating in our conversation. Roger, is anyone else who would like to participate?
No, sir, there's not.
Thank you very much. Wayne, now may we have the staff report?
Certainly. Staff is supportive of the petition as it's been filed. This is a unique request in terms of the ordinance supports front yard setback averaging. However, in this particular case, the average setback does not equate to exactly the number that the petitioner would need to be able to facilitate this project by right. You do have a very similar setback and a property that's in immediate adjacency to this parcel, and certainly the street relationship is something that exists currently. Certainly staff is I think as excited as any other party participating this evening to see this type of project move forward, but certainly it is a project that is supported in thought by your zoning ordinance. Doesn't quite get there, but certainly you have a property that's next door that enjoys a very similar setback. Therefore, staff's support derives its the heart of that conversation from that issue, from that topic. Again, staff is supportive of the petition as it's been filed, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Wayne. We have the opportunity to help get a home restored to at least closer to its original condition, and it seems like a very small ask of only 1 foot 4 inches. So I generally would lend my support to this. Are there any questions for staff or any discussion amongst the group? If there is no further comment, then I would entertain a motion.
I move that docket 2020-29-DSV, a petition for development standard variance to provide for a porch addition to an existing single-family home, which one deviates from the required front yard setback in the urban residential village zoning district, RV, as established by the exception provided in the zoning ordinances, be approved as presented.
I second.
Thank you, Mr. Mundy. Thank you, Ms. Campins. All those, actually, gosh dang it, I still can't learn that. Wayne, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Mr. Mundy.
Aye.
Mr. Papa.
Aye.
Mrs. Campen.
Aye.
Mr. Wolf.
Aye.
Mr. Jones.
Aye.
Motion carries. Mrs. Thorpe, good luck with your continued restoration of this wonderful home. Next item on our agenda is any other matters to be considered. And I think what the conversation was, we have some unsigned findings of fact, and I believe, Wayne, we are working towards a solution with that, but we understand there's been a minor temporary delay, so we will continue to leave that there.
Yes, we're working on that, and certainly tonight you'll have a set of negative findings of fact that will need to be already created and then prepared and brought back for your adoption. But yes, with Town Hall opening as of October 5th, we have additional tools at our availability to assist with getting minutes and other items signed off and approved.
Very good. It's nice to see you back behind the Zionsville logo. And while we're here having a moment of conversation, we anticipate that this will be somewhat of a hybrid meeting at our next BZA.
Yes, the town has the ability to facilitate hybrid meetings. The town council utilized this ability on Monday night quite well. This meeting tonight was planned and facilitated well before this ability was finalized and launched. Certainly our plan commission meeting that's coming up on the 19th, the town council meeting on the 19th as well, will use this hybrid system that was deployed previously this month, and we'll look for the town council, or I'm sorry, your board, the Board of Zoning Appeals, to utilize this opportunity here in November. But we know this system is fluid. We know the issues at hand are fluid, so stay tuned for future changes if they come.
Very, very good. And thank you, Roger and Wayne, for your assistance tonight. Are there any other matters to be discussed? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.
Great. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good
Thank
evening.
you all. Take care.
Enjoy the debate.